Alright guys, it's been a while since I've made a theory video, and I've been missing making that kind of content, to be honest. If you guys remember, that's where the channel originally began to pick up momentum. Now this one's gonna be requiring you to put on your tinfoil hat really hard today. However, I do think there's some supporting evidence, and to be honest, if this theory was true, it would be a very beautiful full circle. I'm sure if you watch the entire video, it'll keep your interest and you'll consider this to be a beautiful piece of art. So without any further delay, let's get right into it as always. So the first part of this theory will be building the foundation so that people can understand where I'm coming from. So if you look at the end of Resident Evil 7, we have Ethan being handed a gun. He takes down Evelyn, a figure appears in front of him claiming to be Chris Redfield, evacuating them out of the area and saving the day. Now, a lot of people at the time were very much considering, is this Chris Redfield? Is this a double agent, a clone? There was all sorts of conspiracy theories coming out, and honestly, I can understand where a lot of them were coming from. Capcom was very silent about this issue, and Chris Redfield is one of the fan favorites. To further compound the issue, the appearance of Chris Redfield had drastically changed in this game, and a different voice actor had been used. However, Capcom did tweet that this was officially Chris Redfield, and to further reinforce the idea, they did two things that to me cemented the fact that it is Chris. The first was they explained in depth that the model changes were due to the fact that the geometric technology they had used and applied in the game made it so that Chris Redfield's appearance would look slightly deformed if they had just ported his appearance from, say, Resident Evil 6. Which meant that they were also trying to basically dispel the conspiracy theories, but they went a step ahead, releasing a user manual, which I covered before, that gives the events of Resident Evil 7's ending from Chris's perspective, and yes, it is him being a good guy. He basically swoops in down to save the day, he gets Ethan out of the situation by dropping the gun, and then he comes in afterwards to get Mia and Ethan out of there, and they get a blood transfusion and are promptly evacuated. Now, it also goes in depth explaining that the Umbrella logo we saw at the end of the game, that a lot of people were wondering why Chris was working for Umbrella now and how Umbrella was even around after Wesker and Alex's demise. The manual goes in to say that this is a new corporation called Blue Umbrella. It's under strict government regulation, and they're using the research that Wesker had stolen previously from Umbrella to further research counter products to these viruses, BOWs, and even mold. Just any kind of dangerous bioweapon that had been developed in the last few decades by Umbrella themselves. And I'm assuming they had any data that Wesker had himself developed afterwards. Now, the corporate structure and leadership of this organization is unknown at the moment, so we don't know who regulates it, who directs it, what the company's goals are, whether they're a non-profit organization or any other information. However, it does seem like their goal is a heroic and righteous one. I think this dispels any idea that Chris is a bad guy in this theory, or that he's some kind of clone or any other possible explanation. But then we come to the question of, why is the title of the DLC not a hero? That's very counterintuitive as a title and doesn't really make much sense considering everything I've said. Well, looking at Blue Umbrella, I doubt anybody thinks, oh, look at them, they're a really good organization all of a sudden, using all of this bioweapons research and having it all at their fingertips. I'm sure all of this in the Resident Evil universe of bioattacks happening in every local neighborhood, school, fucking city, and even island, that all of this is gonna go to plan. I definitely think there's some malicious leadership behind this and some ulterior goal behind it all. Now look back at Chris. He is a heroic character. His entire life since the events of Resident Evil 1, he has basically been just trying to protect people. That's been his goal. Sure, he has lost people, but every group of commanders loses soldiers, and that does not make their goals any less heroic. It's not as if Chris has resorted to any immoral methods or suddenly lived the hero long enough to see himself become the villain. He's still the same old Chris we all know and love. So what exactly is the intent and purpose behind the title Not a Hero? Like I said, I think there's a contradicting goal between Umbrella's actual true motives and Chris's themselves, and that Chris himself has been duped into working for Umbrella once again, and this is why he's not a hero, because what he thought was saving people in the end was yielding Umbrella extra experimental research subjects and allowing them to develop their research even more than before. So where does Wesker fit into all of this theory? Well, if you consider my first point that Blue Umbrella has basically duped Chris into working for Umbrella once again, it's kind of a full circle back to Resident Evil 1. In Resident Evil 1, Chris was working for STARS, but due to Wesker being a double agent for Umbrella who had infiltrated STARS, it was basically STARS being used by Umbrella for their ulterior purposes, and considering that Chris was basically used by Umbrella themselves, he had been duped, and his heroic intents had been used against him. Of course, all ends well as any story does, and it looks like Wesker is killed by the Tyrant at the end of the Resident Evil 1 game before Chris blows the shit out of everything. If the DLC does seem to be Blue Umbrella using Chris, and at the end of it he vindicates himself by destroying and blowing the shit out of another big environment, laboratory, mansion or whatever, this would actually be a beautiful full circle back to Resident Evil 1, and this is the original idea that Resident Evil 7 was going for, being a homage back to the old game, so this would totally make sense from a development and thematic perspective. So let's go back to the point about how nothing is known about how Blue Umbrella was officially founded, who the leadership behind it is, or the corporate structure of it at all, or any of the ultimate ulterior or endgame goals. I'm sure everybody here does agree on the fact at least that Blue Umbrella is a nefarious organization. They definitely don't have this new BSAA style mentality, and honestly speaking, from a storytelling perspective, considering how far established the BSAA is, to the point it's an international organization established in multiple different countries, and then you also have to consider that TerraSave exists, which is another major organization with the goal of fighting bioterrorism. It really just doesn't make much sense unless it's another organization that's eventually going to flip the table and show its true colors. But who could have orchestrated such an extensive cover-up? So let's put this into perspective. Considering the government is closely tied to this, it requires an extensive amount of political influence. It also would require a huge amount of wealth re-establishing such a large organization, on top of current bioweapon knowledge, locations, and expertise into the subject, including obtaining Albert Wesker's personal weapon that we saw at the end of Resident Evil 7, as well as obtaining all of the research he had stolen from Umbrella. Such an individual would have to be very powerful, influential, intelligent, and there is really only one person I already know of that's established in the Resident Evil universe that fits this profile perfectly, and that of course is Albert Wesker. Now, considering the rivalry between him and Chris, this would be the ultimate checkmate. He would have had Chris working for him once again, just like in Resident Evil 1. This in itself would be a beautiful full circle and the true homage to Resident Evil 1 that Resident Evil 7 could make, and this would be a beautiful comeback for the fans. It would ultimately also make sense why Chris is not a hero, because once again he was under the manipulation of Albert Wesker. And if this was the case and we ended up destroying Wesker's facilities as well as killing him, which I'm sure many people wouldn't believe, it would still be a full circle in every single context and regard. If this theory does come to be true, that would just be absolutely beautiful writing. I'm interested to know what you guys think about this theory, especially, like I said, this is really going out there. The tinfoil hat went on full mode here, but I do believe this would be a beautiful way to end Resident Evil 7's story finally. I'm not sure if you agree with that or not, or if you'd like to see it another way. I know a lot of people might get sensitive at the idea of Wesker coming back, but with the way this was written, I just thought this would be the greatest way to bring Wesker back if Capcom was considering it. And also, like I said, if you look at how difficult it would be for Blue Umbrella to have been established if they are a nefarious organization, which I think they are, it would require an extremely powerful person who's got a really bitter rivalry with Chris to be using him specifically, and that's just, it's a little bit too coincidental. Also, like I said, looking at the manual and how it also shows the end of Resident Evil 7 from Chris's perspective, and he is a heroic character, the Not a Hero DLC doesn't really make sense in the title alone from that, so I'd just like you to consider that fact as well. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about it anyway. If you want to follow my Twitter, guys, I put it in the description every video. You can go check that out, follow, and keep up to date with all the latest information releases, my personal thoughts, and just some funny stuff from time to time. I've also got a Discord server you guys can join, again in the description. There's a permanent link there, it always works, and you can come say hi to the community, myself, and everybody involved. I'll also post a video in which I went over Blue Umbrella and the manual released if you guys want to go check that out in the description. So yeah, just apparently go to the description, guys. There's like a billion great things there, the music, everything. I hope you're all enjoying your day anyway and you've enjoyed this video, but for now, guys, take it easy as always. Have a beautiful day.